The Honourable Member for North Island, Powell River.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'm, as always, proud to rise on behalf of the amazing people in North Island, Powell River. Today, we're here talking about a private member's bill from the member from the Bay of Quinte, and it's Bill C-365. So this is a very interesting bill, Madam Speaker. It's about consumer-led banking systems and Canadians. And happily, I've had some constituents come to visit me about this very issue from the Coastal Community Credit Union in my riding. And they talked about some of the really significant issues, especially for people living in more rural and remote communities who may not have access to a bank at all in their community, or it's a long distance to go to a bank. Or they may be in a situation where they only have one banking institution in their community and they want to go to a different one, but they can't because sharing that information can be incredibly complex. And so this is really the key of this issue. It's making sure that information that is your personal banking information is accessible so that if you find another bank that's going to meet the needs that you have, you'll be able to get that information sent in a way that is more transparent for you and for the banking systems. So this PMB asks this Minister of Finance to table a plan for implementation of open banking within 30 days of this act coming into force. Madam Speaker, I think it's really important for us to all understand that in 2018, which is a bit a while ago, the Finance Minister did create an advisory committee to look into this, and in 2021, they delivered a report that included a plan for implementing consumer-led banking in Canada as early as 2023. So here we are in 2024, and it's still not happening. And again, Madam Speaker, it really is about making this more accessible. I've heard from some of my constituents, and this is a particular concerning area for me, who have apps that allow them to take multiple banks that they're using and look at the information in a way that is comparable. The problem with these apps, of course, is that individuals are sharing all their banking information, all of their passwords, and hoping that the app doesn't take that information or it isn't hacked by somebody and be used in a very negative way. So this is very concerning and something that my constituents have been very concerned about. So if the minister, this is the other part of this bill, if the minister cannot produce a bill within the timeline associated within the first 6 months of the act coming into force, the minister must table a report so that there's transparency and we understand what is the holdup and what is the problem. So, we need to see these things done. And, Madam Speaker, when it comes down to it, I think what we have to assess very clearly is that competition is the key here. So I have to thank my friend, the member from Windsor West, who's been doing a lot of work on competition, knowing things like our cell phones, some of the highest rates in the whole planet are here. And why is that? Well, it's partially because we don't have appropriate competition. It's the same thing that we're seeing in our grocery stores. The gouging that's happening in our grocery stores correlates very clearly with the fact that CEOs, big, very wealthy CEOs, are making huge profits, getting huge bonuses, and their shareholders are walking away with a lot of money. At the same time that's happening, everyday Canadians are struggling to feed their families. And Madam Speaker, people who work in those grocery stores are often not being paid well enough to afford the food in the store that they work in. And that just tells us, and I think Canadians know instinctively, that it's just not a fair system anymore. And what we're seeing in our system is more and more gouging. We're seeing it with the oil and gas industry, where they're seeing record profits like they haven't seen in years and years and years, at the same time that people are trying to figure out how they're going to fill up their tank. I do come from a rural riding. Some of our communities are extremely isolated, and it's not just putting gas into your car. It's putting fuel into your boat to get to the places you need to get to for grocery shopping and for the basic necessities of life. So I really appreciate and see a lot more people in my riding buying electric cars. There's plug-ins. I've seen them working out in places like Was, which is a very small community, but already has a plug-in station. So people are using that, and that is fantastic. But we still have a long way to go. And when people are suffering, we know that competition is at the very core of the issue. And this is something that actually starts to take steps moving forward to address the issue of this. And Madam Speaker, when I think about competition, I have to think about basic human rights and the fact that if you can't afford the basic things, and I got to tell you at this point, if you don't have a cell phone, you might be able to get away with it if you're retired in your 80s. But if you don't have a cell phone today, it really leaves you not able to access things. You know, I work with a lot of seniors in my riding who are still figuring out how to use computers, and they are certainly not interested in any way to go to the public library to do their taxes. So we do things to help them and support them, but young people today, they know how to use everything, and they know that if they want to sign up for anything, make an appointment with a doctor, all of those basic things, they must have access. And if it's too expensive, and if we have less and less competition, then the consumer pays, and that is a big problem in Canada, whether it be banking, whether it be grocery shopping, whether it be buying gas. It's all about the fact that we've let the ultra, very wealthy, wealth that most Canadians can never even consider, walk away with lots of cash in their pockets as we're struggling. And that's why the NDP continues to do the work that we do to make sure that there's more fairness. But, Madam Speaker, I am going to take this opportunity because yesterday I was left with a lot of fear and anger in my heart. And I think as parliamentarians, when things happen to our country, we should always stand up in this place and talk about them. And what is making me afraid today and very, very angry is the fact that in Alberta, the Premier is now putting forward legislation that says that children who want to identify as who they are in school have to get permission from their parents. And I think that is a horrifying reality of attacking basic human rights of people. You know, if you look at our system in Canada, there are no things legally as parents' rights. There are parents' responsibilities, but there certainly is children's rights. And I hate to see any step in this country that will put children in a place that they are not safe. Because we know this from statistics, that children that come from the queer community are not always safe at home. They can't always be honest with the people that they love about who they are. And if we don't give them a place where they can make sure to identify as they want to identify, we risk their very lives. And I think all Canadians have to stand up against this. And I want to say in closing, Madam Speaker, that last year I read a beautiful Canadian book called Falling Back in Love with Being Human by Kai Cheng Tom, an amazing, powerful trans writer who does a beautiful job of articulating the power, the fierceness of the trans community, the amazing beauty and strength and solidarity. And so I just hope that as we face this challenge, we remember that not only are these children and young people vulnerable, they are also powerful and strong and are going to be pushing back really hard. And as they push back, we must do our duty and make sure that they are not damaged. So I hope all people in this House consider the safety of children. And I would like to quote Kai Cheng Tom at the end of this speech by saying this, quote, "To build a better future, we need to learn how to transform in response to one another. We can't build a better world by getting rid of people. We can only build a better world by bringing them in." Thank you, Madam Speaker.